So, Mike, can you walk us through your decision to mentor Arta into your role? And what did you see in her that made you believe she was the right fit to lead next?
See, I hired Arta to open and manage a property, and she was doing a great job. And we 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 agreed on a lot of things. We had sort of the similar work ethic, and place was really humming, doing well, filling well. Families, she knew everyone in the property. She knew the families, she knew the residents. Was always walking around doing really good management style.
Mike had a ton of experience in the industry, so he was in my trajectory. I'm like, okay, this is somebody that I want to work for.
I'm Heather Maxwell, and I would love for you to join A Minute with Maxwell Mission in Motion.
So, Arta, your story is one of incredible growth from frontline to executive leadership. What first drew you into the retirement sector?
Um, Thank you, Heather. I did not plan to be in retirement. It was pure chance. I had about a year before I landed this job, I had moved to Canada and had gone back to school a bit, and I was looking for a position in either administration or accounting. Somehow, I ended up landing an office manager position at a retirement home. I still recall the first interview. It was December. It was a nasty storm out there. I ended up the buses were not running, so I was, oh my god, I'm going to be late for the interview. So I ended up walking about half an hour to get there. I was drenched. I was freezing. I was so upset. I was crying at the same time because here I had prepped to go for this interview because I wanted to do better and get a land a job. I get there and I'm just soaked, right? Somehow the stars lined up and I did get the job, but it was a role that completely opened my eyes to how fulfilling this industry can be, and I haven't looked back.
Wow, that is quite the story, Arta. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And so was that your very first job, or what was your very first job? And what lessons from that role still influence how you lead today?
So that was my first job in retirement.
Okay.
Yes, that was my first job in retirement. Like I said, I had been in Canada for about a year before I started working, and I had done odd jobs before that. I translated a little bit for some immigration centers and so on, but this was my real job, so to speak. And it was completely new to me, and it was a big learning curve in that retirement industry was a model of care that I didn't know. In Kosovo, where I come from, elders are usually cared for by the families. So this was I had no idea what to expect. um, Once I started, it was a great organization I worked for. But once I started, I was interested a lot in the organization, in the management of the operations and whatnot. But it was the residents that drew me in. I never forget. I My office was sort of like around the front desk area, so I would see residents come down from upstairs for breakfast and whatnot. And I never forget this one resident, Mrs. M. She was a survivor of a Nazi camp, and when I met her, she seemed so withdrawn and so lonely. Rarely spoke with anybody, but she had this quiet smile, and always carried packets of sugar and crackers with her, and which later made all sense when I learned why, or when I learned her story. But um, over time, as I got to talk to her a little bit more bit by bit, I learned so much about her history in the past and before she had moved to Canada and so on. And it was learning how that shaped her, and things that were not immediately visible, right? So that's something that just hit home. As cliche as it may sound, and I think Mike mentioned it earlier, it's a people business. It's a people first industry, whether it is the residents, whether it is um, the team members, the family members, and so on. And to echo what Mike said earlier, you take care of the people, and the rest follows, right? And that was the perspective from day one, and it's kind of still guides me on how I lead at Riverstone today.
Oh, that's amazing. And this is why we always say be kind, right? Because you never know what a person has been through,
No.
and you don't know what's going on in their life or what their history has been. And so it's so important for us to be kind and non-judgmental of people, right? That's so interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So what was that transition like? I do want to dive a bit deeper into that, Arta. What was that transition like for you coming to Canada?
Huh. There's it wasn't an easy transition. It wasn't, in that I came from a war torn country. So when I moved here, I was fortunate enough to have had my brother move from Switzerland here about, I would say, about a month before me, but he had lived in Europe, so was versed to being an immigrant. So when we moved, we literally, that would be my husband and myself, moved with nothing but two duffel bags of clothing. um, had absolutely nothing. You're faced with not knowing the language. You're faced with there's always culture shock, and in our case, you also had the heartache of leaving family behind in a war torn zone. But I have to say that Canada and Canadians have a wonderful way of helping people feel at home. At least that was my it is my belief, and it was my experience. Um, but I have to say that as an immigrant, you have to want it. It's not handed to you. You have to want it. You have to be determined to adapt to the new ways of life, and succeed. Um, there's always challenges. There were times where I was paid less because I was new to the country, or there were times where I had to work probably extra hard to nail that promotion that I believed I deserved. Um, but these are all moments that just shape you for the future, and they made me more determined. They made me more resilient, strong-willed, or I mean, that's a nice way of saying stubborn. People people say stubborn. Um, Also, I think being an immigrant, it gives you a specific lens to a lens on people, right? I've learned that sometimes you really need to pause and take a step back and look beyond what you see on the surface. I recall not too long ago, one of our team members, we were having lunch in our lunchroom here, and she seemed a little bit withdrawn. So we're talking anything, weather and fashion and Netflix and everything in between. And I said, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I had learned that her daughter had moved back home. Um, they're living in two different continents, and it just like that's just so gut wrenching because um, you have to stop and think and see what really is beneath that surface.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that is so true. And kudos to you as a leader that you knew and you recognized that she was withdrawn, right? So you knew her, you knew what her normal sort of demeanor was, and you caught on to that, that she was a bit withdrawn, and you were able to ask her, what was wrong or how she was feeling. And I'm sure that meant a lot to her as well. So that just speaks to your people skills and having that those observations, being able to observe when maybe somebody is not quite themselves that day either, right? And again, we don't always know what's going on with our employees behind the scenes and what's going on in their personal lives, right?
Exactly, exactly. So taking the time, taking the whether it is to discover that potential or just to lend an ear and let them talk, be there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, given your background, Arta, how did your background shape your values, work ethic, and leadership style? Because we heard Mike comment that you had a very good work ethic. And so, how did your background shape that?
I think that comes from my parents. I was fortunate to be raised by two incredible human beings. My dad had this calm and determined vibe, and my mom, well, she's even today at 86, she's a force to be reckoned with. I I was raised to never give up, to be kind to people, whether it's the cleaner or it's the president, to treat everybody sort of the same. And one big lesson that my dad gave me was to pick my battles wisely. And that has helped me quite a bit. And these are lessons that I carry when I lead Riverstone or whenever I've had leadership position. And it's also I apply them when I'm raising my daughter, right? And speaking of my daughter, she too has quite a bit to do with how I lead. Um, Oftentimes, I think when I'm handling a situation or whatnot, you know, how would I do this if Era was on the other side or on the receiving end of this? She too has volunteered in our homes and has worked in our homes and what during her high school and university, but like I look back and it's like, okay, well, if she was the employee and the manager is doing X, Y, and Z, how would I want my daughter to be treated? So that has helped me quite a bit. So it's a combination of everything. It's a combination of my mentors. It's a combination of my parents, my family, my daughter, and everything that just kind of teaches you the resilience and the empathy to carry on and make it happen at work.
And I think that that's so huge. That's so profound what you just said, and having that empathy as a leader. And to your point, thinking about, what if that was my daughter? What if that was my mother? Right? How would I want them to be treated? Right? So I think that that empathy piece is so critical in leadership, right? In leadership.
Absolutely.
Yes, and so what challenges have you overcome on your path, Arta, would you say, especially as a female? And how have those moments refined your approach to leadership?
Um, I think my challenges, um, there's one that I can recall, and this was it happened when I was pregnant with my daughter some 21 years ago. I'm giving up my age here.
My daughter's 21 too. That's so
There you
interesting. I didn't know that. There you go.
go. I was up for promotion and I had worked really, really hard to get to where I was, and it was around the same time that the organization that I was working for was planning to open a building, and I was just like a sponge for information. I wanted to get involved and so on, and um, it was the pregnancy that prevented the promotion. Yes, I did get it when I returned from maternity leave. They held true to their word. They did give me the promotion when I returned. But yeah, it was the pregnancy that prevented that promotion. But throughout my experience, particularly during the beginning years of my um, m- me being involved in senior living, I think it had to do with more with the immigrant piece, particularly around the salaries. That back then was sort of an issue. Um, I can proudly say that that's not a thing anymore, and how we treat our employees and who, department managers and GMs, and it has where you come from, who you are, and what color you are has no bearing on the decisions that we make, um, who to award the position to, for as long as you've got the skill set. And we've got quite the diverse team, eh, Mike?
Absolutely.
We've got a very, very, very,
For the job, no matter
yeah,
what.
yeah, best person for the job.
And
Yeah.
that's so good to hear, Arta. That's so good to hear. I'm so glad that hopefully that will not happen to anyone else in the future, right? Because that's so sad to hear at the end of the day. But that leads me to my next question as well. Now that you are leading a large, diverse team, what values or practices are most important to you in building strong culture and continuity of care?
I think leading big and diverse teams such as what we have at Riverstone, and we mentioned we've got nearly 12 or 1,300 employees at the moment. It keeps me grounded. I don't overthink it. I mean, at least I try not to overthink things. But for me, it comes down to treating everybody with the same respect and making sure that people have what they need to succeed. Titles don't mean anything to me. Some of the best conversations and lessons that I've had it happen, talking with the laundry attendant or the dietary server or the office manager or whomever in our homes. I try to remind myself that leadership is not a status, but it's a responsibility. And I have a responsibility for the 1,600 residents that we have in our homes, and 11 or 1,200 staff that we have in our working in our company. And the one big thing for me is keeping my word. If I say that I'm going to do it, I will follow through with it. And I think that's a key to success, because people remember those things. People remember the promise you made. And if you said that, yeah, I'm going to come and meet with you, then yes, I am going to come and meet with you. Just recently, I had gone to one of our homes, and the general manager was telling me that I asked about a particular food service manager who had moved from a cook to an FSM position. It's like, hey, how is he doing? So the GM said, "Oh my God, incredibly happy with him. He's done well, budget management, this, that, the food is delicious, and all of that stuff." And I said, "Oh, okay, great. I'm glad to hear that he's done well, and he was under the a very good leadership. Like the GM in that home is really good as well. That has taken the time to invest in him." But she went on to say that I think he at some point might be a good GM. And he has asked me about it. And it seems that this FSM had gone to the GM and said, how would one do something like that? Or like what next steps are there for me to move up? And why don't I meet with him and I'll explain the whole thing? And she said, "Oh, you would?" I'm like, "Yeah, why wouldn't I?" So we set up a meeting not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and we spent about 2 hours talking. You know, um, I explained what we do, how we do, and if he wanted to do, we have a mentorship program. If he wanted to participate in it, and I we went at length and discussed what to expect, what the GM um, uh, role is all about. And as my director of operations says, it's a lifestyle. It's not a job. Ashley often says, "Oh, it's an organized chaos and a lifestyle," which it is. It is because you are going to get those calls when you're just about settled for the evening and something has happened somewhere. But that all that to say to come full circle is taking the time to be there for your team and to learn. And last week, we hosted a New Year's lunch for all of our leadership team um, and our support office team. And my goodness, and I was saying this to Mike earlier, we are big, right? We had over 100 people in that boardroom at the Andaz Hotel where we hosted the lunch, and it was so amazing to see everybody having a great time talking. Um, and I received few thank you notes uh, from um, from some of the department managers and GMs, but two that I would like to note that kind of talk about the culture we have in our homes. One was from a GM. She sent me a quick text and said, "Hey, Arta, it was great. We enjoyed it." Um, and she said, "And it got my wheels turning. And how can we build on this moving forward? How can we make this even better?" Right. And this is it has been with us for, oh God, no, about 12 or 13 years. And the other one was a department manager, and I happened to be at a community for a meeting the next day. And she's like, "Oh, you know what? It was so great. But, here's our few ideas about next time." And Heather, that openness, that the fact that people feel comfortable to say, "Hey, here's an idea for next." And this lunch was not my idea. I can't even take credit for it. We were trying to figure out how do we gather everybody for a casual lunch. No professional development, no talking, no education, just a pure simple lunch. And it was my director of HR. It was Jeps. Like, how would we do this? And we made it happen. You know, so at the end, I think when people feel safe to speak up, when they're invested, when they're already thinking on how to improve things, that builds trust, that builds that beautiful culture and the continuity of care every single day.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love those stories, Arta. Those are amazing, amazing stories.
This podcast is brought to you by Maxwell Management Group. For nearly 2 decades, we've worked side by side with individuals, teams, and organizations to uncover what makes them exceptional and to help them grow from the inside out. It's not just about reaching goals, it's about creating success that feels deeply authentic and genuinely meaningful. Organizations like people have stories, and when those stories are rooted in purpose, they become powerful forces for attraction, culture, and identity. We are committed to partnering with brands that want to lead with intention, cultivate vibrant workplace cultures, and become the kind of employer that top talent seeks out, not because of perks, but because of purpose. Over the past 18 years, I've had the privilege of leading Maxwell Management Group's growth into a highly specialized national executive search and education firm, one that thrives on values, vision, and the belief that when people lead with purpose, extraordinary things happen. To find out more about our executive search, recruitment, and education services, please visit us at maxwellmanagementgroup.com.
And to your point, when you have trust, when there is trust both ways, people are not, it's that psychological safety that is so important in today's world. People need to feel safe in order to speak up and bring those ideas forward, right? And we want to hear our employees' ideas, right? Because oftentimes they have fabulous ideas because they're on the front lines, and generally they know sometimes better than us what's going on, and it's so good to get their input, but they have to feel safe to be able to speak up, right, as well. And so that psychological safety is so, so important. Wow, kudos to you. That is such an amazing story. I know that when we have partnered a few times with Riverstone and to recruit, and you always had these amazing stories. That's what stuck out to me when we were recruiting for a couple of positions with you alongside of you. And you always had these amazing stories about, you knew exactly, you knew all about the home, what was going on in the home, what the leadership was like, or what may have been lacking, and what you were looking for, and what the stories that were, what the home was doing, what they were up to, the people in the home. And I always was so, I guess, in awe that you knew all of those details, because oftentimes when we speak to leaders, they'll say, well, you have to call the home. I don't really know. I don't know the answers to these things. You'll have to call the home. Right. And it depends on how large your organization is, of course. But you always had such great stories and knew and sort of had your pulse on what was happening in each home. And that is just so amazing as a leader to know all of those pieces. And again, to feel your staff, or to make your staff all feel safe and valued, and having that empathy, and that trust where they can openly speak up as well. So kudos to you. I just love those stories. That's amazing, Arta. And so, Mike, I will hop back over to you. And before we dive deeper into legacy and leadership, I have to ask, how have you been enjoying retirement? What have you been up to? And how has the transition felt after such a purposeful and people centered career?
Heather, I always loved what I did. I love my work. I love Riverstone and my entire career. Now I love retirement. It's your thing. I've got lots of hobbies, and I'm out in the woods with my camera chasing birds, and a little bit of skiing, cross country and downhill skiing, and just enjoying family, and it's nice to have some time. And I also get together with the colleagues, past colleagues, once in a while, and get caught up on what's happening at Riverstone and other businesses as well. So I'm enjoying things for us.
We've got most at a diner
Like,
that I very much enjoy. So the mentorship, just for so everybody knows, the mentorship continues.
Years. I love it. I love it. That's right. Oh, that's awesome. You have a little diner that you meet at. That's awesome. I'll wait for my invitation to meet the two of you.
Walter dancing. It's my slab.
Well, I would love to. That's amazing. So, Mike, looking back on your career, what leadership legacy are you most proud of?
Oh, there's a bunch of them. I remember, I still go back to the 99 bed facility in Kitchener. I love walking around and speaking to the residents and such, and filling that property. And you always remember the first property you opened from construction to being full as well. That was special. But I think when I look back, certainly Riverstone is my biggest legacy, and the people, the people told me the stories about the people who have moved ahead and now in positions of responsibility and thriving. So it's nice to leave that behind, that we listened to the people, we saw potential, and we gave them opportunities, and they thrived. And there's so many stories in the facilities and in the properties. And it's only the people stories is the biggest legacy to leave behind. And it's I enjoyed Riverstone, especially when it was small and just a few properties, and I knew everyone. And now it's different, but I leave that behind, in that we started it, and it continues to grow. There's still properties under construction, and this Riverstone does not know how to stop going. The success continues, and it's great to see Arta thriving and doing well as well.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. It's amazing. Riverstone just has such a stellar name in the industry. And we can see why, because of the people, right? Because of the people. And that's amazing. So, Mike, what advice would you offer to current executives who may be nearing retirement but haven't yet identified or prepared a successor?
Well, in order to have a relaxed retirement and not go from that quick paced career to relaxing, you want to make sure you've got a responsibility, and there's lots of people depending on you. And I think it's time to think about it and make sure that you have someone in charge that you're proud of, and you can be proud of the business after now and after retirement, as far as that goes. So I think, yeah, there's many people depending. I look around and see if there's talent that would thrive with more information and to be brought forward and to be brought into meetings and learn more, before you do take retirement and leave.
Yeah, it's so important. That succession plan is so important. There is no doubt about it. And it is, we want to make sure that there's not a brain drain, right? With that person walking out of the organization. We want to ensure that that knowledge is transferred to the next team, or the next person that may be taking over, and not walking, not having that knowledge just walk out the door, right? It's so crucial. And so, Arta, what does success mean to you today? And how has your definition of leadership evolved through each chapter of your journey?
I was reading this question last night, and uh, you know, things change with age, and success today it feels quieter than it used to. In a way, it's not about titles or milestones anymore. It's walking into a home and knowing our residents are safe, they feel seen, they're cared for, and knowing that our team feels supported enough to do their best work. And earlier we were talking about the presence in the homes and knowing everybody, and that comes from Mike. When I first joined Riverstone, it'll be 10 years now this coming June. Um, Mike would come visit, but he was so respectful of my time and what my day was like, that he would come in, and if I were behind closed doors in the meeting, or I was um, on the floor, or whatever the case may be, he was so respectful of that he wouldn't bother, we wouldn't demand my time or anything, and he would continue and talk to the staff, talk to the residents, hang out in the lounge, or so on. But it resonated so much to me, because, as I said in the beginning, you'll learn, you get to choose the leaders you want to follow, and those are the things that I'm like, I came from a world of corporate before Riverstone, and when corporate would show up, you had to be on your best behavior, right? But that's not natural. It's not what actually happens. They have to see you in action. They have to see you what you actually go through. So when it's a beautiful lesson I learned from Mike, and I carry that forward, because um Mike was there. He knew if I had a pipe leaking somewhere and I didn't get to it that moment, he knew that was happening, because he had a chat with my ESM, or so on and so forth. So um the understanding of leadership changes also with experience, and with few hard lessons along the way. We've all been lucky to have strong mentors, and some of my biggest growth has come from moments where I thought, hmm, this is not what I'm going to do. This is not a lesson I'm going to carry forward. And those experiences force you to reflect and figure out what who you want to be as a leader, and not just what you want accomplished.
And finally, Arta, for individuals early in their careers, especially newcomers, excuse me, especially newcomers in Canada, what advice would you give them about building a meaningful and impactful path in this sector. And how important is it to identify a mentor early in their leadership journey?
For any sector, really, as a newcomer, I'd say don't rush. Don't rush things and don't give up. Success takes time. Uh, Often you see people have moved to this beautiful country, it's like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and rush through things. You've got to go through the cycle. All right. You have to build a strong foundation, and you have to stumble a bit, fall, and then get up, dust, and grow from there. It's all part of it. You can't skip steps, right? When it comes to our sector, I genuinely believe that there's nothing better. Um, it's incredibly rewarding. I had an opportunity to leave the industry back in 2013, and I couldn't do it. I went right back into it. But knowing that your work truly impacts the residents and the team members, and feeling that sense of camaraderie, and there's just nothing like it. Just nothing like it. Mentorship. Yes, it's very much important, particularly when you're new. Finding somebody early on that can guide you, can challenge you, and share what they've learned can change everything. I was lucky enough to have my brother here first, like I mentioned, but I've also had a number of people that I got to meet throughout the first few years that I was here that sort of believed in me, and guided me in navigating few things. But I know I likely wouldn't be where I am today without my mentors, Mike as number one, but others as well that have invested in me. And it only takes one person to believe in you. Um, and 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 it's sometimes it's believe they finding that one person that believes in you before you even start believing in yourself, and that's the key.
That is so true. That is a great statement. I love that you said that it really only takes one person to believe in you, right? And wow, that's amazing. It's so amazing to hear the leadership journey that you both have had and the mentorship that took place quite organically at the end of the day, and how it's worked out so beautifully. So kudos to both of you, because, this is such a great example, I think, for people to see, and to see how beautifully, it can work out when you really put some intention into succession planning, right? And I guess I would also ask you, it's, as we're talking about today, it's so important to identify those in your own organization that perhaps have potential and would like to move up, so that you can mentor them into the roles that are appropriate for them. But I will ask as well, when you do have to look externally, you don't perhaps have someone in your organization that is, that can take on a leadership role that you might have available. Arda, can you maybe comment on how do you go about looking externally? And if you are looking for an external search firm as well to partner with, what do you look for when you go out to the market?
I think that's a very good question, Heather. And we generally have we go through the process that's you post your positions and people apply and so on and so forth. And when we've had a rough patch and during the pandemic, I think, where there wasn't a lot of movement, there wasn't a lot of talent out there, and we ended up partnering with different recruitment companies, one of them being yours. And I think the biggest piece for me when we're selecting a recruitment firm is being aligned. The visions need to be aligned. Like when Heather had taken the time to meet with me to hear my stories, but also spend that time to really understand what we were looking for. And there were times where I had a need, and I never forget this. I had a need to make a change, and you're like, "Yeah, but Arda, this is not the right way of doing that." So you took the time to also explain to me um, what the best approach is. So I think I look for collaboration. I am not looking for a sales pitch, right? I'm looking for somebody who understands what my needs are and then, finds that solution, right? And just being able to communicate that way with a recruitment firm and or any partner actually for the business, as far as the business is concerned, any partners like understand what my needs are, right? Before we you hit me with your sales pitch that I may not be interested in, right? And may not hit the mark and may not hit what I'm actually looking for. And that, you when bringing people from external, it's important to again have that alignment of our vision, and you want to see that's what they're bringing, the skill set, the technology, the all of that can be taught, whether using different platforms or whatnot, that can be taught. It's the energy that they bring, it's the insights that they bring, it's how they how they display what they would do in terms of looking after our residents, looking after our team, and so on, that are most important for us.
Yes. They always say hire for attitude over skill,
Right.
right? You could train the skills, but you need the good attitude, right?
The attitude.
That that is so important, so important. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that as well. Any last words that either of you would like to share with us today?
Well, as you go through a career in this business, you end up with lots of stories. You've heard
Yeah.
some of our stories today, and it's a fabulous business to be in. It's the people business, and it's a great way to spend a career. And at all levels, people feel they're improving people's lives. They have
Yeah.
purpose, and it's important, like you said, Heather. Those people have a trust and can speak to people at all levels with their ideas, and we can hear those ideas too, or harder can hear those ideas because that's where the best ideas come from the field and come from the people that are working in the
Yeah.
positions for sure.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to it is just take the time to listen. Take the time to listen, and generally the answer is amongst your team, right? Or your residents for that matter.
People also want to be here too.
Yeah.
We free artists as the position doesn't make a difference to us, and we don't think vice president that sort of thing. But when a resident or a staff member talks to the vice president, it means something to them. Even if it doesn't to us, if we don't carry the position on our shoulders, it means something. Yeah, and sometimes we forget that because we're just speaking to another person.
Well, exactly, because it's not important to us, right?
Mhm.
Good industry. It's a very, very, very rewarding industry to be in.
It is. It absolutely is. And those are all great words of advice. And we are constantly advocating for young people to consider retirement living and long term care both as fields of choice, right? To consider this sector because it is so purposeful. Mike, to your point as well, it is such a purposeful career. So thank you to you both. I can't thank you enough for being on our podcast. Thank you for sharing your stories and in particular, your story that beautifully demonstrates that true leadership isn't just about where you go, but who you bring with you. So, this episode is a testament to the power of intentional succession, the ripple effect of mentorship, and the boldness it takes to invest in people before they're fully ready. Because when we do, we don't just fill roles, we build legacies. To our listeners, if you're in a leadership seat today, ask yourself, who am I preparing for tomorrow? And if you're thinking about how to build your own succession strategy, I'd love to talk. Whether you're just starting or ready to deepen your leadership pipeline, let's start a conversation about how to build the kind of bench strength your organization and your mission deserve. Until next time, thank you for joining us on Mission in Motion, A Minute with Maxwell. So thank you for joining us today. And if you would like to learn more about how Maxwell Management Group is supporting the continuing care sector, please feel free to visit our website at maxwellmanagementgroup.com. And also, please like and subscribe to our podcast wherever you download podcasts. Thank you for joining, and see you next time.